If your doubles are sounding like this instead of this, then you might be making one or both of the two mistakes that I see in countless beginner drummers. We'll break down exactly what these two pitfalls are, but then we'll dive deeper into the bigger reason why beginners are struggling with doubles. And I'll share with you how I ended up learning doubles as a beginner without actually practicing doubles. You see, there's a big secret that has everything to do with how you're practicing finger speed, which is required for doubles, and it will determine how quickly you actually gain speed and fluidity with your doubles. Today you'll learn how to dodge our two big pitfalls, and you'll learn the 3 steps to faster, smoother doubles that you can actually use on the drum set. You can do this. Hey, welcome to the Non-Glamorous Drummer. I'm so glad you're hanging out today. I help self-taught beginner drummers know what to practice so that you can nail songs and be the drummer other people want in their band. Hey, are you having to practice on a practice pad? Like, are you constrained to pad practice either because you've got to play quietly, or you're having to practice on the go away from the kit, or maybe you haven't bought a drum set yet and you're getting ready to buy one and you've just got the sticks and the pad? If that's you and you're spending your time practicing on a practice pad, it's really critical that you practice the right things, because it's very possible to practice a bunch of practice pad-y kind of things that don't actually carry over to the full drum set. And so you could spend months playing on your pad, then get on the full kit and feel like, what did I really learn? I don't want that to be you. I want to save you all that trouble. I have a free PDF e-guide for you that's right here in the description that's going to help you solve your weak hand and build fast, fluid chops that you can apply to the actual drum set in 3 daily pad exercises. It's just a 30-minute practice routine. It's going to help you out a whole bunch. That way you know that you're practicing the important, critical things on the pad that will actually translate to the full kit when you actually get on the full kit. This helped me out so much. This was what I figured out when I spent 2.5 years living in an apartment and playing on a pad. I realized, hey, if I do these 3 things every day, I can then show up at the rehearsal, show up at the gig, and I feel like I've actually been playing the drums. So I hope it'll do the same for you. Be sure to grab that, my free gift to you. So the 2 big beginner mistakes here. So I'm gonna see if I can demonstrate these so that you can basically see both of these mistakes in action here. Here's what might be happening if you're making these mistakes. There's a lot of things going on there. And the first mistake is where you're seeing the stick wobble. You could probably see that from this camera right here. I'll do it again. Where there's not really any control, like the sticks are just wobbling, they're zigzagging, they're not going straight up and down, they're zigzagging. That is the mistake of allowing your fulcrum to shift too far up into your hand. The fulcrum needs to be secure right here. It needs to not be way down here, but it also needs to not be way up here in the palm of your hand. What can very easily happen is if you're not careful, that fulcrum can slip and end up here in the palm of your hand, which then causes you to lose the fulcrum because then the sticks just loose in your hand. And that's what causes all the wobble. And so that first mistake is not having a secure fulcrum. We're going to talk more about that. The second mistake is the one that's causing the rebound to choke out. So I don't know if you noticed, but when I did that demonstration a second ago, it sounds terrible, right? Because the rebound is getting all choked out. We want it to be big and open like this, where there's actual stick height and everything's even sounding, but instead we've got this galloping because it's getting choked out. Why is it getting choked out? Well, there's a few factors going into this, but the big mistake, kind of the fundamental mistake, is the pinky sticking out. I was totally guilty of this as a beginner. Maybe you are too. I've seen this in so many students where the pinkies tend to stick out, but what happens is when the pinky starts sticking out and when the ring finger starts to follow it, because ring finger tends to follow pinky, then we end up squeezing tighter up here at the fulcrum trying to compensate for that. And so we end up with this tightness right here, which then causes the stick to go like that and choke out instead of, because what we need is, but instead we're ending up with like that. I see this mistake in, I want to say like 9 out of 10 beginners, because it's an easy, honest one to make. And so if you can fix that and keep your pinky from sticking out, then that allows you to have more friction, more skin contact here in the back of your hand, so to speak, so that here in the front of your hand, you're able to pay more attention to the fulcrum, keeping it loose yet controlled. That's what we're going to break down in lots of detail. So honestly, though, if you can avoid those 2 mistakes, you're really doing pretty good. But I know I fell prey to these, and so many of my beginner students, I see them doing this. But as soon as we fix those 2 things, they're really off to the races with much more loud, even, consistent, great sounding doubles that can actually be used around the drum set because they're full and even. So So let's get into this. First though, the big secret to successful doubles. This kind of determines the direction we're going to go today. And this might be a little bit counterintuitive, maybe a little bit controversial, I don't know. But here it is, big secret to successful doubles. Use singles to learn proper grip, motion, and finger speed. Then the doubles will solve themselves. This was actually how I learned doubles. This was the process that I learned doubles. I'll share with you the details in a little bit. But the point here is that instead of sitting here trying to practice doubles, instead just practice singles. And in practicing singles, you can actually learn all of those important prerequisite skills that go into doubles so that then the doubles solve themselves and you're less frustrated. So our 3 steps here that we're going through aren't actually 3 steps to playing doubles. These are just 3 steps to speed. We're talking about 3 steps to faster singles, and then we'll talk about how to apply that to your doubles. This will be a whole bunch of fun, nice and simple and straightforward, and even if you're a beginner, you can really catch on to this. 3 steps to speed, or 3 steps to fast singles. Step number 1, you might have guessed it, make sure you've got a good fulcrum here. You're gripping correctly. Make sure you're gripping correctly, fulcrum in the right spot. Now everybody's hands are a little bit different, and so your hand doesn't have to look exactly like mine. But we want our fulcrum to be somewhere, midway up the middle finger. And we've got other lessons here about why middle finger, because long story short, if you do a middle finger fulcrum, it helps open up your hand more, give you more potential for stick height, fluidity, smoothness, volume, being able to be controlled and firm without squeezing tight. A lot of those tricky sounding kind of things that we've got to be able to do with our sticks, doing a middle finger fulcrum makes it all easier. So in a nutshell, that's why we're doing middle finger fulcrum. What we want to do is make sure, remember, that our fulcrum is not slipping too far up because then we lose control. We've got to make sure we're here where we're able to put pressure with the end of our thumb here on the middle finger. And then just test it by hinging it back and forth. If you've watched many of my lessons at all, you see me do this, and it seems so silly, but it's so important. This is how we test our fulcrum. If you can't do this, if you can't toss the stick up and down with the stick hinging in your fulcrum, that means something is wrong with the fulcrum. It also means that you're not going to be able to get motion and rebound on different surfaces of the drum set. This is what's so critical. If you're playing on a floor tom, you can't just be totally... You're not going to get that response, and so you can't just drop the stick and expect it to bounce if you're on the floor tom, because if we do that, that's what happens, right? It just flops. But if we have our fulcrum established, we have this motion, and we can do this. We can create this up and down motion. That means we can get rebound out of our floor tom. That's important because we need as much rebound as we can get when we're playing doubles. And so this is totally going to play into that. And of course, anytime the fulcrum is slipping or falling apart, that's going to ruin everything you're doing. That's why that was the first big mistake. You're going to have wobble, you're going to have zigzag, inconsistencies, all the messy things we don't want to see in our doubles are going to happen if that fulcrum isn't secure. So establish your fulcrum, practice doing this up and down, and you're off to a good start. Now, this is where we kind of take a detour. Step number 2 is we're going to play quiet singles. So normally we're doing this whole thing right here because we want to create big motions, and if we're talking kit fluidity and moving around the drum set, we want to have these big motion singles like these big arcing motions. However, we're going to work out our fingers here. Our goal is to build speed and work out our fingers. So we're not going to play loud. Fingers are not made for playing loud, they're made for playing quick. And so we're actually going to take the quick and quiet route, which is a little bit different here. So step 2 is play quiet singles working up to 8th notes at 140. So you can start off aiming for about a stick height of about right here. We're only going a little past 100 right now, 110 or so. And so just practice playing those singles nice and even. You're making sure that you're not gripping too tight. The stick's kind of loose in your hand. You're just gently putting it into motion with your wrist. No arm, definitely no arm needed here, but also no fingers. We're just using wrist. I'll get my metronome going here in my ear, so we've got that for reference. Here's what 120 sounds like. So to do that along with me, this should be pretty effortless, right? If you have your fulcrum point here, it's established, the fingers are gently wrapping around. Remember, we don't have any pinky sticking out or anything crazy. We're just gently getting the stick in motion. It's just rebounding because we're doing this on our snare, on a practice pad, and so we've got the rebound happening, and we're not playing loudly, so we shouldn't be getting tired. This is really just an exercise in smooth movement and control. Not a big stick height. We're not going any higher than like 6 inches. So now what we want to do is gradually work our way up in tempo so that eventually we're right here at 140. 1, 2, ready, go. Remember, we're not playing loud. This is very relaxed. And so the goal here is just nice and steady. A little bit of wrist movement, keeping the stick in motion. And you see how the stick is moving within my hand. I'm not gripping tightly, otherwise this doesn't work. It just has to be this gentle kind of shaking motion. It's almost like we're shaking the stick, and that keeps it in motion and keeps it moving. Now, what's cool here, when we get to eighth notes at 140, we're at this crossover tempo where we could play these with our wrist, or as we start to move a little faster, we can actually switch to using our fingers. Can you see the difference there from this camera right here? So if we do wrist, it might look like fingers are moving, they're just reacting to the stick's motion. Right now I'm just using my wrist. But now I can switch to fingers. So now my wrist isn't doing anything. There's no motion here, it's all fingers. And you're literally just going like this, just open, close really quick, fingers are just moving back and forth. Nothing crazy, nothing fast here. We're just teaching our fingers to begin working. And it might feel a little bit awkward. At this tempo, we're going slow enough that it's still better to use your wrists. But it's a crossover tempo where now we can start practicing using our fingers. So as we continue going faster, if we get to 160, for example, here's 160. And 1, 2, 1, 2, ready, go. It starts making a lot more sense to use fingers as we get to that tempo, just because we're getting fast and it's less effort to use fingers instead of wrist. And so that's the whole crossover. We want to get our soft singles, soft eighth note singles to 140. And as we push faster than that, start practicing this motion here where we're just gently moving the stick with our fingers. It might be sloppy at first. Your brain's learning to connect with fingers that it maybe hasn't really used before. And so you're starting to make these connections. You're starting to activate them. You're starting to use them. And so really that's the step 3 here. We're just switching from wrist driven to finger driven as we move faster. And as you're able to go to 170, 180, great, but there's not much reason to go faster than that just yet. Our bonus step here, really beyond those 3 steps of working up to 140, 160, switching from wrist to fingers, bonus step is use the French grip exercise to strengthen your fingers and specifically work them. This is kind of a troubleshooting thing. Like if you find, okay, Steven, I'm having a hard time using my fingers, like it's just not working. That's okay. Because if you've never done finger stuff before, odds are it's going to be a little weird. Maybe if you come from a guitar background or a piano background, you've got some finger dexterity from that. But otherwise, if you don't, maybe this is brand new to you, and so that's okay. The French grip finger exercise is just where we switch from what we would call an American grip to a French grip, where we have thumb on top, and it's really easy to just drive the stick with our fingers. And so try just doing this. You'll find that even just with index and thumb, you can twist the stick back and forth and do this pretty well. Now, the important thing here is making sure that the stick is not perpendicular to your thumb. If it looks like this, it's not going to go so well, but if you can line it up so that your thumb is at least 45 degrees to the stick, the more parallel your thumb is to the stick, the better. When you're just doing index and thumb, it's kind of hard to do that, but we'll get thumb more in position as we add the other fingers. But practice just twisting the stick back and forth like this, thumb and index. From the overhead camera here, you can see what that ought to look like, the angle the thumb's coming at and where the stick is resting on the index finger. But really that twisting motion is what's creating this, and the other fingers are continuing to drive it. Then let's just add in the middle finger. Now let's leave middle finger out and do ring finger. And now pinky. What's interesting is most of the time with this exercise, the ring finger actually has the most potential to really drive it. And so there's a lot of reason to work the individual fingers and make sure that ring finger is able to work and operate well. So once you add all the fingers in, you'll find you can actually go pretty loud and you can start going pretty fast too. At this point, we're just trying to work out the fingers. So the goal is to get the eighth notes loud at 120, which would be right here. Also, you can start putting towels on your pad or on your snare. You can do a pillow. You can do this on your leg. That way it just becomes more of a workout, and you'll find you really start to feel the burn in your forearm. And the thing is, it's not just strength we're working on, it's agility. I always say you could be a bodybuilder with arms 4 times the size of mine, but still have trouble with this because you haven't built that brain connection to really get the agility going on with your fingers. So it's not just strength. Maybe you need to build the strength too, but it's really more the agility and connecting this with your brain. So get that going, practice that. Just make this a daily thing you do. You could do it sitting at your desk at work. It's nice and quiet. And I have plenty of students who do that kind of thing where they just keep a pair of drumsticks here and they covertly whip them out and start working on stuff while they're on break at work. So you can do this and really start to strengthen your fingers, and that will help a bunch. So if you do all of that, what's really cool is that at this point, you're working your fingers in the context of singles. And so you're able to work toward doing things like where you're able to play fast singles that are just fingers. And this was basically how I learned to work my fingers and ended up learning doubles as a beginner. I'd worked through the Realistic Rock Method book. Fantastic method. If you don't have it, you should check it out. And my teacher got me going in Jim Chapin's Advanced Techniques for the Modern Drummer after that, which is a jazz coordination thing. And there's a particular exercise in there where you get to, you're doing the slow swing pattern. You're going. It's super weird because you're doing these straight fast 16ths on the snare with the swing pattern on the ride. And so as a beginner, new drummer, it was a really weird thing to practice. But the cool thing was that in working on, my hand had to figure out, okay, how am I going to play these fast, quiet singles? And my fingers just naturally started working. Now, part of that was because I was left-handed. What I found was that I had to very intentionally work on this to get my right hand to do the same thing. And I had to go through this whole process I just taught you to get my right hand to do the same. But what was cool by doing all of this and getting the fast, quiet singles happening like that, I found that, oh, well, doubles are kind of a walk in the park now because I've already got the finger skills needed, and so I can go. It's just not difficult. I'd already made the brain connections with my fingers. And so that's why I want you to try taking this path too, because I think you'll be a lot less frustrated that way. Because you'll get the fingers happening with the singles, then you can move into doubles. So our final question here is, how do we apply these skills directly to doubles? Well, we've got other lessons here on the channel that go specifically in depth with this, but we'll do a quick breeze through it. Once you're up to this point where, okay, fingers are working, we've got some finger strength, we can do the quick, quiet singles. 2 steps here, really 2 main steps. 1, instead of playing a whole series of singles, just play 2, right? It's not rocket science. If you can go, or what if you just play 2 notes? Imagine that they're singles, just play 2. If these are loud and kind of slow, you might play both with your wrists. Kind of a foreshadowing to an interesting technique with doubles. If you want to play them loud and even, but you're not fast enough yet to use your fingers, you can cheat and use your wrists. But then you reach a tempo where fingers have to take over, and so if you can do like that, really in the context of singles, it's all fingers, right? It's all fingers. But if we want to give it some extra power, we can use a little bit of wrist to start that off. Which means it's mostly wrist there starting it off, giving it some power, and then the fingers are coming in to reinforce that second note. But instead of even thinking about it that way, which is more complicated, just think finger singles. That's all we're doing, but we're starting off with the wrist. And then we're just going to do 2 notes. And then once you can do that, alternate between hands. That's the second step. So if you can go. Now, a troubleshooting thing, kind of troubleshooting for step 1 there. If you're having trouble, if you realize like your brain starts tripping you up here, then what you can do is actually backtrack to the bare bones basics of doubles. If you're practicing very slow doubles, you want to make sure you're getting proper stick height and rebound. So instead of, sitting here and going, and then alternating those, you can go really slow and go. And it is important that you're able to do that, because if you're not able to do that, that means you're probably choking out the rebound. And so this is also a good additional test for way back at the beginning there when we talked about those beginner mistakes. If you're choking out the rebound, if you're going like that, this doesn't work. So this becomes another really good litmus test of, okay, can you go? Remember, we've got that fulcrum point here. We're dropping the stick, letting it bounce. Making sure there's stick height there. Because another secret to fast doubles, there has to be stick height there in order for the fingers to then work. There has to be the stick height, the motion that's already happening, for then the fingers to reinforce. So as you're going faster, that rebound is still there. We just then start using the fingers to make it louder and to speed it up, because that rebound happens slowly, right? Very slowly. So we're just speeding things up, making it go faster and louder, and that's where the fingers come in. So for more details on that whole process and some of the various techniques that we might actually use at different tempos in the doubles process, check out some other lessons. I'll link them below as far as like how to cheat your way toward using fingers, how to play them smoothly slow, how to go really, really fast, and what you're going to use there. There's different techniques that you might use and different cheats, so to speak, for playing doubles well at different volumes and different tempos. But hey, my hope for you is that this whole thing is helping you to play a smoother, faster double stroke roll, play better ghost notes. Because talking about kit application, ghost notes is a huge application for soft doubles, but also quick, more intricate timekeeping patterns like whether it's jazz or Latin, that ability very much comes from fingers, which is very much worked on in doubles. And so I hope that you'll have a more complete, well-rounded technical skill, a higher technical ceiling at this point, where your hands are more able to play anything you want to. Maybe playing fills that aren't necessarily singles. If you've worked up your loud, even doubles, that means you can play stuff like. So you can play like weird fills like that. Doing like paradiddles around the kit. It's cool to do those kinds of things, but they don't work unless you can do those loud, strong doubles, because you're playing on surfaces that don't have a lot of rebound. So have fun with this. Question for you before you go. What is your biggest challenge with doubles? Did we miss anything today? Is there anything we didn't cover today that we need to cover in a future lesson? What is your biggest challenge with doubles? Tell me in the comments below. But hey, I hope this lesson has been valuable to you. Even if you're a total beginner, you can really get going with this and make a lot of progress with your hand skills, with your fast singles, and with your doubles, and find yourself able to play stuff that you couldn't play yesterday. I hope you'll make a lot of progress with this, have a lot of fun. So as always, stay non-glamorous. Know that you can do this. I'll see you on the next lesson.